Hey, Sharp friends and family, this is William with SharpeSoft. Today we're just going to chop it up. Got one of our friends up in Canada, Dave. So a little bit about myself, CEO of SharpeSoft. I've been in the construction industry my entire life. I've had jobs from the head broom sweeper to the truck stocker to business owner, and get a chance to run Sharp today. We love the people that we serve. We love the construction industry. Dave, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So my name's Dave Fantini, and I was president of FDM Contracting, a sewer and water main company out of Toronto, Ontario. We've actually just this year celebrated our 50 years of being in business. We have sold our business, but I am continuing doing estimates for a local company here, civil company in Vancouver, and I also do estimates for other contractors that need help. Like Will, I started as a laborer, got my truck license, operate all the equipment. I purchased SharpeSoft 20 plus years ago, and that's the only estimating software that I use, and I love it.
Well, Dave, we appreciate that plug for sure. 20 years ago, maybe both you and I had hair, right? Maybe that was the day that we had hair at that point.
Yeah.
But so, man, just as a quick kind of a conversation, it's coming up in our space, and I think it's coming up in your space too, of when, as a contractor is growing, when is that time to cut bait and get a full-time estimator or hire somebody to do that type of work? So what is it that you're seeing, Dave? What has been your experience? When's that magic time to kind of jump in and hire an estimator or farm it out to somebody else?
Yeah, to be perfectly honest, we had a couple of estimators work for us in the past, and we're still a very small company. I think the most we did was close to $5 million in a year. And I just found that, anybody can learn the system, but it's the person putting that information in that system needs to be knowledgeable about how you want to do that job, as far as your crew size, your equipment, and so on and so forth. So to me, like I said, we had full-time estimators, used Sharp. Then I kind of took it on. I just felt that having a full-time estimator, that's all they wanted to do. That was my experience. So I don't know if you're a $20 million company, if it makes sense to have a full-time estimator. However, there's only so much work you can get. And then what are you going to do with that professional? So if he's willing to do project management stuff, that's fine. But in my experience, estimators just want to be estimators.
Yeah. So Dave, I think it brings up an interesting topic. Maybe before I ask another question, let me ask you this. How was it as a business owner making that transition to trust somebody to bid the work for you at that point? Was that something that you just freely gave them the reins? Did you keep on staying involved? What was the trust factor, and how did that navigate into the position of who and how you hired for that process?
So I basically allowed them to build the whole job. Once the job was built in Sharp, then I would review it, and then we would go ahead and submit that bid. So there was trust to a certain degree. Like smaller jobs, after a while, it was like, if it was a small little job, that was fine. But particular when things were bonded, when you had a lot of things on the line, as an owner, you really need to be involved in that aspect of it. So that's what.
So Dave, from your experience, I've been estimating as long as I've been in construction. That's been something that's been a part of that. What is your experience in seeing people who can estimate? I think I'm seeing things in the industry. It's like we're seeing what would be the old dogs. And Dave, I hate to say that we're probably now in that old dog range, right? We've been doing this for a little while. And there's the new guys. There's the new guys that are coming in, college, well-educated, super smart, but have never really been in the field. So in your experience, what do you think that mesh up is does it need to be a guy who has field, or is it somebody who understands the numbers? Like for you, what's that guy look like? Is it a hybrid guy? Have you ever thought about bringing somebody from the field into the estimating, or what's that look like?
I think, to be really strong in any work that you're doing. If you had a rock star site guy and a rock star estimator or office person, you're unbeatable because and whether it's a guy that was in the field and then he came in and he estimated, that would be the best case scenario because the guy in the field's actually done the job and he knows what he can produce with what tools under his belt. So yeah, you can hire a younger guy out of school, super smart, really good with computers, possibly start him off with loading all the bid items in Sharp. Then he comes out to the field. If you're on that particular job, he gets to view exactly what you're doing. But I think the guy in the field is the guy who's actually going to make or break make that project successful.
So yeah, getting back into that spot of like, when's the right time? If you look back during your past career, for me, and I didn't necessarily understand this when I was younger. Dave, I tried to burn the candle at both ends and then try to find another candle. Like I was just trying to work. It was just hustle, hustle, hustle. And I remember those days as times that I was bidding and running work and trying to do all the other stuff. And honestly, I look back, I probably wish I would have made some different decisions. We'll get to that in a minute. But what do you think was those times when you said, hey, I wanted to hire somebody? What was it for you? Was it being pinched that there's too much work? There was pinched that there's too much jobs to bid, or you didn't have enough time, or a combination of the three?
I just thought at that point I was better off to being on the job to get the production done. I can control the cost by being on the job. So, if I hired the guy and he was the estimator, like I said, I would just get him to do the drawings, do my takeoffs, load everything up, and then we could review it. And then I could adjust the production then. But having it reversed, it's just, you need a super rock star on the job to be able to do that. And I think there's more friction if it's the other way around, where that owner guy now, he's estimating the job, and then you're going to have to go to the site and spend the whole time there to making sure that it's being done the way that you bid it. So I felt I might as well just be on the job, run the machine. But it was hard to grow the business that way. That way we just stayed where we were at because I don't know if there was enough trust on making sure that job was done properly so that our deficiencies were a lot less. So I figured I might as well just be on the job. That way I can control what's going on.
Yeah, Dave, I think as you say that, right? Like when we all start these businesses, we want to grow them ultimately, but I think you hit on something that at least I grew up in the field. I definitely construction's part of my life. I've never had a job outside of construction. How much do you think that idea of coming from the field, right, and then getting into the office stuff versus if you were from the business side coming into construction, do you think you would have been more like, okay, I'm going to do the estimating and hire somebody from the field, that you went more towards your comfortability than what was maybe best for the business at that point?
Yeah, I think if you want to do it that way, you really need to get like a partner involved. If you want to hire like a rock star, if you know somebody that's really good on the job and he's just earning a wage, you want to be able to not steal the guy, but to be able to maybe offer the guy something other than just a salary, right? Give him a piece of the pie, right? That way he has that, yeah, I don't mind working Saturdays. Yeah, I'm getting paid, but at the end of the day, I'm also earning, shares of the business, or I have, other things, if I want to take an extra week's holiday or whatever the case may be, right? I just think that's a good way that would make it work for both people, just having that partner to do that part of the work, right?
Yeah, it creates a little bit of mutual agreement in that situation, right?
Yeah, totally.
So Dave, if you look back, as we're talking, as we're getting into be the older guys in construction, right? If you look back and you would have said, what would have been the right time to hire somebody, even if it was young, old, whatever the position was, when would have been the right time for you to hire somebody to do that? Was it based on a dollar value for you? And do you think if you had that person that you could have grown to be bigger than what you were, or like, what does that look like?
Well, I think that we just picked jobs what we wanted to control. So there was like myself and my brother, and that's all that we had. And then we didn't really necessarily want to grow. We were kind of content on what we had.
Hmm.
But in saying that, I think if I look back and ultimately grow your business to where you're comfortable with, and then the end game is you're going to try and sell it, right? And the one thing that I have learned is that if that's the end game, you want to sell your business, you need a good team. You need people who have been there for quite a few years, so that when you have somebody that's going to buy your business, you have a team behind you. It's not just the family, because what's that family going to do once you've purchased that business? So, yeah, growing the business, I should have probably done that 10 or 15 years ago, and bring in a superintendent, get another crew, have that full-time estimator, project manager, and keep them on board for 10, 12 years, have a plan, an exit plan. But we didn't
Yeah.
really have that, right? So if that's one thing that I could suggest, that's you got to really look at that 10-year plan, right, to create that management team.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a whole other topic right there, Dave.
Yeah.
But from the concept of, estimator or not estimator, would you say, and you mentioned that transition, we're hearing that from our client sides. There's a lot of transitions of companies. The guy who used to be estimating had all the information in his head. He built an Excel spreadsheet. It worked out, and now nobody else in the company knows how to do it. And so, I mean, we help people at SharpeSoft. We help them with Excel, bidding by hand, or other systems. But that transition of knowledge is something I think is hard for people to get through, right? Like it's a
Mhm.
hard overall process. So yeah, I think that's a great point. So Dave, in looking
Mhm.
back, in closing, as you're now jumping on doing estimating for other people, kind of venturing out, where do you see that there's value in maybe what's called fractional estimating? Do you see some value in just kind of what your instant purview looks like?
Yeah, I think with the estimating side of it, I think you don't necessarily, like, I don't think you really need a full-time estimator. I really don't. You think, like, you have a good system like Sharp, you can whatever, hire somebody, get them to work, here, bid this job. And then they bid that job, you charge them a fee, if they get it, great. If not, well, you're still in the game, right? You're still in the game. So especially if you want to be in control, like I wanted to be on the job, I could
Mm,
say, okay, Will's estimating service, right? Can you bid this job for me? So you work, you do all the back end work, you do all this, and then we have a conversation, right? This is how I bid the job. Yeah, that makes total sense. That's the way I would do it, right? I'm gonna have a 345. Okay, but I bid it for 325. Okay, well, maybe we drop the production then. So you you build that job, you get it close, and then there's a discussion afterwards, and then you follow the way that bid was done.
yeah, and I think from the business startup, Dave, one of the things that is always a struggle is cash, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
we don't have a money tree sitting in the backyard. So if you're going to go out and pay top dollar for an estimator to be sitting around, you may not have the volume to justify that. Now
That's
you're
right.
having some consternation of, now there's this pressure to get work. And
Mm-hmm.
we've all done this. We've all taken jobs that we shouldn't have taken because we needed to get a job, right? So if that concept of removing the estimator out of an everyday process, and then having somebody fractional who has an immense amount of knowledge, who has been through
Mm-hmm.
the ringer, who knows all the situations, and maybe use a system like Sharp. I don't know. Maybe they use Excel. I don't know. We would obviously love for them to use Sharp, but the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that you could leverage somebody else's resources. It might be a position to save on some cash. So Dave,
Mm-hmm.
I love this discussion. I love the idea. Look forward to the next ones we have. Like, any just kind of closing thoughts based on what we've kind of covered. Just what's closing thought there?
I just really think that you have to think long and hard about when is the time, when does it make sense to have a full-time estimator?
Yeah, you know what? Maybe next time we'll dig into some economics on that conversation
Hmm.
and really see what it costs for a hired estimator versus a fractional estimator,
Hmm.
and maybe have some spreadsheets built out so people could see that just as a real number.
Hmm.
Because I think it's a viable conversation that quite honestly hasn't happened in the last 20 years, from my experience per se.
Hmm. For sure. Yeah, I agree.
Well, man, Dave, I definitely appreciate it. I look forward to the next time. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we got this beautiful mountain view behind us. We're loving that. Kidding. Both of us are probably in our living rooms working from home because that's the
Yeah.
best way we get to
Yeah.
do that. And so, yeah, we're calling this Estimator's Edge. We want to give the estimators an edge, and this can be presented by SharpeSoft. So if you have some ideas, if you want to be on, you want to have a conversation, definitely hit us up. But Dave, I appreciate it. We thank you for your long time commitment to Sharp. We love people like you. And to be honest, we've had many conversations off of the camera. I just love who you are. I love what you're doing, man. And I thank you for just your expertise in the construction market, man. You're
Well,
awesome. I
thanks.
appreciate you, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I'm glad to be part of it.